All right, folks, welcome once again, everybody, to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with Jamie Uyeyama, and we have Greg Flamong producing the show. He'll come on, offer some thoughts as well throughout the show. Before we wanted to get going here, we want to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing. ESQ has been making the best handmade custom suits, sport coats, tuxedos, and shirts for the last decade. It's been featured on GQ, ESPN, USA Today, and you've seen them dressing your favorite players and coaches. ESQ only gets the best fabric from Italy and England's top mills. With over 40,000 fabrics to choose from, you're guaranteed to look your best. Go visit esqclothing.com, book your appointment today, and mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. All right, lots going on with Notre Dame football. Today is St. Patrick's Day, which means it's Pot of Gold Day. We won't be getting into that today because we're previewing spring practice, but kind of a big day for Notre Dame recruiting, and, we'll see what happens. We'll see. They've been doing this for a while, and it's been a big thing for Notre Dame throughout the years. So a lot of 2027 kids will be offered today. So if you want to follow that, you can go to the front page of Irish Sports Daily, sign up for a premium account, search for the premium section and just sign up today. And you can follow everything that's going on with Pot of Gold Day. Of course, we have spring practice coming this week as well. And there'll be lots going on here in the next couple months here with both Notre Dame football and recruiting. So lots to get excited about. It is St. Patrick's Day. I'm not wearing, I guess I do have green shorts on, I guess. But I just got to say this, Yama, I hate Irish music. I just hate it. I just got to tell the whole world that. I just hate it. I hate everything about it. I really do. I love the Irish. No problem with Irish people. No problem with Notre Dame fighting Irish. Just not an Irish music fan. So,
what about when the Dropkick Murphys? They're throwing out the
no, I can't stand them. And I like the guys. Like I like who they are as people and everything. I really do. They seem like really cool guys and down to earth and kind of salt of the earth type of guys. But I just don't like the music. I just don't. Even like the Pogues. I'm not a big fan of that either. I don't know. Just whatever. It doesn't matter. We're talking football. All right.
I like Guinness.
I get asked all the time about also people always ask about my guitars. I don't have any Paul Reed Smith guitars. I just have never liked them. So I just never have. I don't know why. I'm a Gretsch guy. I'm a Fender Tele guy. I like some Gibson. So mainly I play Gretsch, though, because it's just kind of my sound. All right, let's get going here, Jamie. Today we're going to talk some linebackers, and we're going to talk some defensive backs. I'm writing something for tomorrow for the site and everything about spring practice. But when I look at the linebacker situation, it's kind of a couple of knowns at this point, and then some guys who are sort of known but not really. And then a bunch of unknowns at this point. And, we talked last week about the opportunities for guys to come out and show what they can do, because some guys have been out for spring. Some guys are going to be limited, put on a moderated schedule where, they're not going to take as many reps as some of the other guys. So when I look at the linebacker situation, we know that Drake Bowen's going to play a lot. We know that Kingston Villamu-Asa is going to play quite a bit. And we believe Jalen Sneed will play quite a bit. But there's a lot of opportunity there for guys like Preston Zinter, Teddy Rizak, Bodie Cahoon, Jaden Osbury. Unfortunately, Kahanu Kia is going to be out, not really able to do anything. So we won't get to see much of him. And then, of course, Madden Fermo is also going to be there. So, Yama, when I look at it, this is a good opportunity for a lot of these linebackers to really show what they can do. And like all the other positions we've talked about, there's really an opportunity to kind of establish yourself in the pecking order, and hopefully you'll be able to know exactly where you're going to be. And kind of one of the things that I mentioned in the story I'm writing for tomorrow is that it's also going to be a good opportunity for Notre Dame's staff to figure out exactly what they have, right? they'll know after this spring, because so many guys are going to get a lot of reps that maybe not would have before, because you got guys limited. You have guys that are hurt. They're going to have a pretty good idea of what they have as far as talent behind them, the next wave of guys. And so that's really going to help a guy like Mike Martin, who really doesn't know the roster as well as some other people. So a GM who gets a really good opportunity to look at what some of these young guys can do, it's going to help him know what they need to find in recruiting and also what they need to find in the portal. So it is kind of a very important spring in that regard. So let's start with linebacker here. Who do you think needs to have a good spring to kind of set their status and their place on the depth chart? And then who do you think could potentially maybe stand out a little bit this spring at linebacker?
Well, I think I'm thinking of, they're bringing back 4 guys out of their top 5 last year, guys who played a lot, right? Obviously, Kaiser's the only guy that they're losing. Jaden Osbury, to me, like, this is a perfect opportunity for him. That they're going to put a little bit of a restriction on Drake Bowen and Jalen Sneed. They're on that restricted list where, like, maybe some days they won't do as much as other days. And we don't know how that exactly is going to go. But that probably means that he is going to be running with the ones quite a bit. Osbury's going to get a chance. He would get a chance there anyways, the way that they kind of rotate in practice. That's what they've done, right? So, and I think it's like a perfect opportunity for him to really kind of like establish himself, because if you look at Bowen is kind of like set. He's going to be the Mike. He already played the second most snaps next to Kaiser last year. He's probably going to be a captain. There's just everything is kind of set up for him to kind of like, he's going to be the guy who's going to be like the quarterback of the defense, the main guy, right? And it's who's going to be the next main guy beside him. And I think the one thing with Sneed is, that he can play multiple roles, and obviously he did play multiple roles, and he's more of a Swiss Army knife type who can, he's going to play on, sub packages. He can line up on the edge. He can do all these kind of things. And Osbury, for a guy, he's built like a rover, but they're not going to play a rover. So he can't really be that guy. He's got to be like an inside linebacker. He's got to be a will linebacker. So how big is he? How can he, how is he going to handle himself inside run game? Obviously he did a good job last year for the most part. But I think you could tell that in some cases, right, where he was like, he'd be wrong. When he was right, it looked great. But when he was wrong, you could see some of those misses kind of show up a little bit more. Yeah. And it's about like kind of cleaning up that part of it. Because if he does clean up that part of it, I mean, he could be like an elite level linebacker. Like, because he can really move. He's an outstanding athlete. Obviously, too, there's so many guys that rarely even play as like a redshirt freshman and play the amount of snaps that he did. So I think he kind of needs to establish himself, though, because of all those guys you said that are building up, and also because I really think Kingston Viliamu-Asa, KVA, is just going to take a major jump. Like, I think it's all set up for him. And I just look at it when, like, even in that the national championship game against Ohio State, like, he played a ton of snaps in that game. Like, which was like the first game that he was like really kind of completely healthy back from his ankle injury that he suffered before. Because before, he was kind of like, in the games leading up, he was kind of playing on just like one leg, trying to rush the passer for them. And it was a noticeable difference where he could play like off the ball. He can be a superstar. I mean, he just has so many big time qualities. Obviously, he can do a lot of the stuff that Sneed does, but he's also can do a lot of stuff that Bowen does too, right? Like, he probably has the most complete skill set out of everyone. The fact that he looked as good as he did as a true freshman is so rare. I would say the depth chart was different. So he wasn't like a established starter, but if you look at it, I would say if you judged him compared to Jalen Smith and Manti Te'o, he was more advanced than those guys, I think, as a total linebacker.
No,
right?
I agree.
And so you look what those those guys made from their freshman to sophomore years. Both of those guys made huge jumps. I think he's in line to do that. And so he is the guy to kind of watch out for me as like, this guy can take a major jump.
When you look at the depth chart and the way things are shaping up, we know Madden Faramo is going to be here this spring. You've got Anthony Saka, Koakia coming as well as linebackers. And then we talk so much about how much they're in nickel. I mean, there's really only a couple linebacker slots now that play consistently. You don't have a rover a lot of times because you're playing so much nickel. Do you look at the situation like they have too many linebackers? You got guys like Preston Zinter, who has looked good at times when we've seen him. We've heard good things about Teddy Rizak. Bodie Cahoon's in there. We mentioned Kahanu Kia. And then you add all the guys like Madam Ferramo, Anthony Saka, Koa Kia. I mean, how do you slot all these guys? Where would you put these guys if you had to put them on the depth chart and which position?
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so difficult because, they are a nickel team now, right? And really, it's a nickel game now, right? That's just where the game is gone. If you're out there with a linebacker, unless you have, even if you had a JOK, you're probably not going to play a rover that often. Like he probably would have played a lot more inside linebacker today than he would have when he was, in his last season in 2020. Right. So, I think because of that, that's why the added value of like the sub package stuff that, like the KVA and C, that's how those guys got extra snaps last year.
Yeah.
So that's something that I look at, like Mad Fermo. He might be someone that could grow into an edge. He might be someone who is that same kind of, he's got the same skill set as those guys where like, yeah, he can drop and he can cover and do this too, but he's a really good pass rusher. Like he has just like a natural feel for it. So I think the way that I look at it.
Do you think he would be more of a Maris type or do you think he'd be more edge when they kind of get him into the game type of thing?
Oh, I think he's more of a Maris type. But certainly like I could see him like later on kind of growing into that, eventually. I just think he has the frame to do that. But I also think that he just is one of those guys that has that kind of skill set too, where he can do a lot of the same things KVA, where you're like, oh, he looks comfortable just dropping and just his awareness and coverage too. I mean, Zinter to me is, he's a Mike, right? The problem is like you got guys like Bowen and KVA, so it's really hard to get. I mean, you could play Mike or Will. It's very interchangeable in a lot of ways. So it's not to say that he can't, but like if you're looking at it, like if they're going to play 5 linebackers again this year, which I think they will, because they just have too many guys. Like one of those guys, whether it's Zinter, whether it's Cahoon, where's Rizak, where's Madden Ferramo, at least one of those guys. Because I think it'll be awful tough for Saka or Kia, maybe Kanu Kia when he's back, because I think obviously he's been in the program and stuff, and he would obviously not be someone this spring, but someone later on to watch. Like, I mean, to me, would be a guy that I think he might be too good to not be able to play. So I think there's a chance they play 6 linebackers this year. And if they do, I see Kia as very similar. He's a Maris type as well, right? So it's like he's going to kind of be competing with Ferramo a little bit. Can Ferramo like establish himself like a little bit like KVA last year, where it was just so obvious? Like KVA came in and they're like, this kid is too good. He's has to play as a freshman. He's too talented. So can Ferramo do that? Rizak is an interesting guy because obviously you look at his size and that is the main thing. He's not big enough yet, right?
No.
But he can't play as a there's only so much you're going to run as a big nickel, right? And what they do there. So I just think that he's going to be an interesting guy to watch and see like what his physical development is. Cause how sometimes they list what you weigh on the thing and then we see them in person. We're like, I mean, this guy's way bigger than what he's listed. So he's someone that I'm really interested to kind of see where he's at. Cause obviously he is a very talented athlete. He's super long. Like he is very long, but he's not a natural linebacker. Like it was when I was watching him in camp last year, it was an adjustment for him. Like you could see that, but you could also see like all the good things of why they recruited him. Cahoon, I think, is maybe like the guy that if I was going to pick out of one of these guys outside of Kahanukia, I would say that Cahoon is one of the guys that I would think maybe has the most chance. I know they're like excited about him. They really like what they've seen. I mean, to me, when I look at him physically, just he looks like ready to roll, right? And it's just one of those things. Like there's so many guys there. It's just I don't know. What Sid Iyer said to say, linebacker is loaded. It is loaded. So I think even when you look at it, I don't know. I mean, they might decide because who knows if guys are going to transfer or whatever. You never know how it's all going to play out. But they really, if they wanted to, they have Thomas Davis in the 2026 class. They could take only one if they wanted to. They could. I mean, they probably will take more because the other thing is you're just always getting good players. And now that they're going to the 105, these guys are all could be core special teams guys too. So that's another kind of piece to kind of add to it. But
Rezak's really already that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
He's already that guy. So, I think he sticks around because of that. He is going to play a lot of special teams. And then, they have him listed at 207 now. You want him at least at 215 by the time the season rolls around. Probably going to be a little undersized at that point. But, Jaden Osbury wasn't real big either when he first started playing. So, but you talk about length and speed and just athleticism. He's definitely got that kind of ability. So, it's a good problem to have, Jamie. Gosh,
it is a good problem. Yeah.
When you first started doing this with me, we'd be like, God, can they even find three? You know what I mean? That's what it was.
It really was.
It was. Yeah. Could you even find three that you want to play at this point? And now it's, but I think that's the way that it's been, lately for a lot of these positions. And so, we'll see how it all plays out. When I look at the safety position, this is going to be an interesting one as well. There's a lot of bodies here, but I don't think people understand how hard it's going to be to replace an Xavier Watts. And I think that Notre Dame may have a couple guys on their roster who may be even more talented than Xavier Watts, but so much of that position is up here in the head. And it took X really almost a year before he started to become a playmaker. He started playing, he'd made some plays and this and that, but it took a full year before he became a real playmaker for Notre Dame. And so we have to hope that Adon takes that next step, which I think he will. Adon Schuler, we know he's going to probably start at one of those positions, and certainly one tremendous athlete in Adon. But it's that other position. And I think if you're looking at it from a purely athletic, standpoint, you'd love to see Tay Johnson be that guy, because that guy can flat out run. He's a tremendous athlete, got great size, can really be a tremendous talent as far as what you're looking for. But they may need him at corner. When you look at the situation at corner, Chance Tucker can't play. They're going to limit how much Christian Gray and Leonard Moore has. And that only leaves you with Carson Hobbs, Creed Thomas, and Devontae Smith as really the guys who are full go. And now, of course, they're going to play Gray and Moore. They're going to play plenty of snaps and things like that, but they're not going to play as much. And so the safety position, it'll be interesting to see if Tay Johnson stays out there at the safety position, because they may need him more at corner. And, Dallas Golden won't be there till then. And Zachary won't be there till summer. So I don't know. What do you think? How would you handle that if you're Notre Dame?
Yeah, it is. The spring is it because those two guys aren't there, and because you don't know how much they're going to restrict, Moore and Gray, it does make it a little bit precarious there, right? Like I think they're going to be more than fine in the summer and the fall going forward, especially because you look at Mike Mickens' track record with getting guys ready to play early and is evaluating guys who are ready to play early. So I think they're going to be more than fine there. Like it's just what they've had. They've had Clarence Lewis, Jaden Mickey, Ben Morrison, Christian Gray, Leonard Moore. All these guys played freshmen, right? I mean, you go to Cincinnati and Sauce Gardner, right? Like he has guys ready to play. So I imagine that whether it's Cree Thomas, Zachary Golden, one of those guys will be ready. But yeah, in the spring, they might have to do a little bit of that with like some cross training with Johnson. But I think like I personally, when I'm looking at like where the safeties are, I want to see Johnson at safety. Like I want to see, because I really think like because of he has, that kind of athleticism there where he can man cover and he can match up and do some of that stuff. I think obviously, I think when you're talking about the mind and all that kind of stuff, like just the recognition, that they're not going to be able to replace that with Watts. Thanks. Like Schuler can get better and do that, but Watts, it was like, it was incremental, right? It was pieces and pieces and pieces stacking on top of each other. And Schuler, I think, could take a big jump this year, and I think he will. But I just don't think, too, he's also just a different player than Watts, right? So, I think it's going to be, and I look at like, Luke Talek, Kennedy Urlacher, and Tay Johnson, and I look at those guys, and I think those guys are all really intriguing. I'm excited to see all of them, really. But it's kind of like you're not going to get that exact same what you're getting out of what you got out of Watts. So how does Ash and how does Mickens, how do they adjust to that? Which one of those guys is going to be the guy? Because we know the thing is that Jalen Stroman, he's out for the spring. He had to get shoulder work done. And I would have loved to see him. That's too bad that he's out, but he will play. He at the very least will be like the Rod Hurd role, in terms of like the third safety, right? Maybe not the extra nickel, but he will be the like at the very least the third safety, maybe even the starter opposite Adon, right? But with these other guys, like I think Kennedy Urlacher, like he could be like just like rocket ship, just there. Like he's an exciting player. Like I
do you think he would back up Adon? I mean, do you think that's his?
I think his fit is So that's the other thing, right?
I do too. Yeah.
So do you shift some of it? And I know whatever a lot of it is interchangeable, because it's not like they played X where he was single high all the time. That's not how they did it, right? Like they did a lot of different things there, so it's not going to be exactly the same. But I also think that if I'm looking at like Talek and Urlacher, I think they're more of Schuler.
Yeah,
just athletically, skill set types. That's how they fit more, and that's why Tay Johnson, I want to see him there because he's different.
Yeah,
right. He's different.
Tremendous
right?
athlete, and you'd love to see him in the single high if he could handle that. But so much of that is up here, and you got to be. You can't play that unless you have one very smart player back there doing that, and that's why X was so good. Was he was smart. He could feel the way the ball was going, and he could find where he needed to be. And some guys have that, and some don't. But when you talk about
Max Redfield is a perfect example.
Yeah. You talk about Tay Johnson's athleticism, it was way above X Watts. I mean, that guy can flat run. And X was a good, he was a good athlete. He wasn't a great athlete, but he was a good athlete. But Tay Johnson can flat run. I mean, he can cover. He's 6'3". I mean, it's exactly what you're looking for. You'd love to have that guy there. But again, can he be smart enough to play that position? And will you have to play more, two safety, not as much single high type of situation? We don't know, and so that's going to really determine. And with the corner situation, I mean, first of all, if you're Carson Hobbs, you're like, this is great, man. I got a great opportunity. If you're Creed Thomas, I mean, there's hardly any freshman corner that comes in and says, wow, I could be, running a lot of stuff with the twos this year. And he really will be. Maybe even some ones if he does well. So, it's a great opportunity for those two to really grow. And then, of course, Devonta Smith will get a real, education in what they need to do with him defensively. And they'll get a chance to look at him as just a regular corner too. I'm sure he'll play some regular corner.
He'll take some reps out there.
Yeah, just so they'll, know if something happens to a starter, can he slot in here? Or do we put Carson in here? Or do we put Cree in here? Or who do we put? So that'll be interesting. And then, we haven't even talked about the two freshmen that, Jadon Blair and Ethan Long are both coming in as early enrollees, and they'll be there. Jadon was already there through spring or through playoffs. And, so he got a kind of baptism into what to expect, and Ethan Long will be there as well. So they'll be in the mix, but I don't know, man. I would love to see Jadon Blair as a wide receiver. I would just want to see it. If I were Notre Dame and I watched a lot of his senior film, I would say to myself, I want to just throw him out there for a couple, practices and just see what he can do, because he really looks like, to me, a boundary type of receiver, but we'll see. So
I just wanted to add just one thing, just on those two guys, because I know like there are people that, they're like, what about Jadon Blair, or like, why isn't he doing it right away? It's just one of those things. How many freshman safeties actually play? And even early enrollee guys like that actually come in, because you like you said, there's so much as the mental part, and like knowing the defense and the checks and all of this, you have to be so advanced. And Kyle Hamilton, that's the list of Notre Dame safety guys who really earned it, because he had to earn it, because they had Gilman and Elliott coming back.
Yeah,
but there hasn't been any other guys that have played, right? Like, and Notre Dame has had some talented guys play safety, and it's just extremely difficult, because you look at a guy, Kenny Urlacher, perfect example. Watch him in that Purdue game, and he looked all world going there. But the reason he wasn't like good enough to play is because he wasn't probably there mentally yet, where he could make a mistake and then all of a sudden the band's playing. And that's why safety, you just can't play a freshman if they're not ready. So maybe, one of these guys is able to be surprised, but probably not.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it all plays out. Like I said, I think you just don't want injuries. That's what you can't, especially a corner. You can't have any. So we got to hope that they can make it through spring without any sort of serious injury, because there's just not a lot of bodies there. And so that's really what we got to hope for. When you look at the spring at this point, heading into this, if you're Marcus Freeman, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to make sure that you get done if you're Marcus Freeman?
Well, it's obviously they're prioritizing like health and getting guys ready for the fall, and I think that's honestly the smartest thing they could do after that kind of long season. I think that's super smart, but you don't want to waste these opportunities and not get exactly what you need out of it. I would say that it's less about, yes, install. They're going to do all that kind of stuff. That is part of it. But the main thing on defense, I think, is obviously getting guys comfortable with Ash getting comfortable with the personnel, understanding like, hey, this is what we're adding in new that we want to kind of like master and get there before. And that kind of thing is important, but it's all about the development of like the younger players. And I think this is like, because it's something that I'm working on right now. just writing about some of these young guys on Notre Dame, because you look at who Notre Dame has coming back that were huge parts of the defense last year. You know, the top 3 defense in the country. It's great defense, and all this talent is coming back, but they have all this young talent that I think can really like take a step and be exciting. And we talked about some of these guys already today at linebacker and safety, but if all of a sudden you get to a place where we name probably like 7 or 8 guys at linebacker and safety and corner that you're like, well, if this guy does this, if this guy does that, and not all of them are, but if you come out of the spring and you're evaluating your roster and you're like, man, 4 of these guys are going to be like dudes this year.
Yeah.
They are going to be major contributors for us. It just absolutely just elevates everything you can do on defense. And which is why I think like you look at where some of the guys that are out, it sucks that they're out. Obviously you wouldn't want Boubacar and Botello coming off major knee injuries, or you wouldn't want Stroman to miss the spring. But what it does to gives all these other guys chances, right? And Logan Thomas, like perfect example. Like that's a guy who can really like, take advantage of those opportunities, right? And there's going to be so much of that. And I think really on like both sides of the ball, that's the main thing, is like get that kind of like development from within the roster, build up the back end of the roster to get to the point, because it's not like the guys returning don't have steps to take to develop. And we know they will, because that's how it's been. But yes, Micah Gilbert, who's great thrown up, like that is a perfect example of a guy who's like, he's going to get all the things. And if they come out of spring saying like, hey, Micah Gilbert, like he's going to be a guy. I know they're bringing in Malachi Field, but Micah Gilbert's got to play too. Like that is something that is going to be exciting. But obviously the quarterback is the kind of the one thing you want to kind of have a good idea of the quarterback. And everything else in terms of position battles, I think is going to kind of fall into place from there.
Seems like our producer, Greg, is looking for some appreciation about all these wonderful photos that he's putting up. So we got to put,
he is doing a great job.
We got to give Greg a little bit
of I don't need anything. Matt put it in the chat. And so he said, Matt put it in the chat. Someone asked if it was me. I just said it was me. That's it. Just trying. You know what? Just trying to elevate is what we're doing.
No, it's adding to the product. Absolutely.
For sure.
Greg, what are you most excited about as far as spring practice? What are you going to be most excited to kind of monitor?
I think it's like what Jamie just said, like the young guys, like the being able to like solidify the kind of I don't want to say the back end of the roster, but just like that second tier of guys, because especially on defense, like they are so like we've used the term loaded. Like you can't be anything but bullish about like the young talent that they have. That's like frontline starters. and like, but you also have like the back end too, that can kind of elevate things and just really raise the floor of the defense. Right. And I think that I'm very curious about how Chris Ash kind of comes into the defense and, adds, whatever wrinkles that he has, not even wrinkles in terms of scheme, but just his coaching style. But I think if you can get the back end of this roster, like we talked about, like Bronte Johnson, guys like him, like athletes like him, Kennedy Urlacher, Luke Tolich is a very, very good athlete. Right. And, you guys were talking about, replacing X at safety. And I think you guys touched on it a little bit, but the fact that they never gave up anything deep, like he never was out of position. He was never like, oh, they busted, or they ran a double post and, he chose the wrong guy. Like he's always in the right spot and the quarterback is always having to go off of someone else. Like, how do you replace that? And I wonder, because everyone is like everyone behind, X and, kind of the backups between Talich and Urlacher Like, I wonder if they want to move Adon to that single high spot, because X kind of did what Adon did last year when he was younger. And then they moved him into that kind of center field role. And then they let Adon kind of do the robber thing. I wonder if they want to do that with someone like Urlacher. Like, let him be the robber. Let him be closer to the line of scrimmage and have Adon move in the back and have him controlling everything. So that's going to be interesting for me to watch in terms of just like how they're doing everything. And I wonder if they don't even, they give Bowen and KVA a lot of reps, because it's like, it's kind of take control of the defense time for those guys. So that'll be interesting for me to watch.
All right, we got lots of questions here we wanted to get to. The first one is, how many will be in the O-line class? I suppose he's talking about the 2026. And who do we close with? I mean, I think they're looking for one more tackle is what they'd like to get in this. Big visit with Ojo coming, I think that would be ideal for me. I love that guy. I think he's going to be a tremendous player. So if you could get him, I'd be thrilled with that. Obviously, there's other guys that are out there as well, but I think offensive tackle is really what they're looking for from here on out. And I think they'll only take one more offensive lineman and go from there. All right. With all the new hires in football office have been subjected, has the football office been subjected to the Indy hiring freeze? If so, is that why we haven't heard any news? I don't think that that's the case. I think that Notre Dame knows that they have to fill these positions. So, and they're replacing people. They're not hiring new. They're not creating new positions. They're basically replacing people. So, they will get people in place, and we'll go from there. They want to know if the new player of personnel position under Mike Martin will be announced before or after spring practice. I would guess sometime here soon. I don't know. I don't know when Notre Dame's going to announce those types of things, but I think it will probably be closer to the start of spring than it will be at the end of spring for sure. They got to get somebody in there because they got a ton of guys coming in.
They got all these visits.
People. Yeah, you got all these visits. You got to have these people come in. And so I think you'll see, names start to come out here very, very soon on this type of stuff. So, all right. Has Indy got its roster to the point where they are just an elite first-round quarterback play away from winning the national championship? What do you think, Yama?
I don't know if that I don't know if it's exactly at that point. I wouldn't say that. I mean, certainly they got really good quarterback play last year. And that was a big part of their success, but you look at, they still need more high-end skill talent at receiver. I think that is just an absolute must. Like, you look at who wins national championships. Every single national championship in the college football playoff era has had a day one or a day two receiver drafted. So, I mean, will Notre Dame have that next year? Maybe, but doesn't look like it as of today. So, you got to get that. That's what you got to have. And you got to have that consistently. Right. But I think like a lot of it, I think if you look at like, we just talked about how loaded they are at linebacker. Obviously, you look like Leonard Moore is probably going to be a first-round corner if everything goes, right with him. Christian Gray is probably going to be a pretty high pick if he keeps. I think he's going to get better and better. There's a lot of guys. They have a lot of NFL talent, and I think they've done a good job of like evaluating and identifying talent. But I think that there's another step that they need to take overall. When it comes to like certain things with like, I think they could take a notch up the D line, and I think they have to go like probably 2 notches up at wide receiver.
Yeah, I was going to mention D line. I mean, when Notre Dame can start to play in rush 4, when they get to that point and get home, that's when you're going to have just a dominant defense, and that takes good interior pass rushers. That takes good edge rushers. And I think Notre Dame's been missing that a little bit. And they've had to generate a lot of their pass rush by blitzing linebackers, blitzing corners, blitzing safeties. That's what they've had to do. And I think you don't want to do that if you don't have to. It's nice to be able to do that, certainly. And you're going to do that anyway at certain points because you want to confuse the quarterback, but you don't want to have to live on that. And I think that's kind of the thing, the next step for the defense is once they can rush 4 and be consistently putting pressure on the quarterback, that's going to allow somebody to spy in case the quarterback sneaks out. It's going to allow you to do more things on your back end there, and I think that's kind of one of the things. And then of course, as you mentioned, the wide receiver situation is definitely a big thing. They got to get better there. They got to get some more playmakers, and they got to get a quarterback who can get the ball downfield into those playmakers' hands to make some big plays. And, we saw what happens when, they hit a big play against, Penn State with Jaden Greathouse. It kind of opened up the game and got them back to where they need to be. And so you need those kind of plays in the game. And you need that to get people to back off your running game a little bit. And they just haven't had that. So we got to hope that happens. And I think we'll see more of that this year. Hopefully even more than we're expecting. All right. Is it likely that this is Faison's last year of lacrosse, or do you think he'll continue to juggle both and play with his brother? I would guess he'd probably continue to play both, wouldn't you, Jamie?
I mean, he's a really good lacrosse player. I think he's probably, next year he might end up being one of the best players on, Notre Dame's lacrosse team. So I think if he wasn't such a good lacrosse player, he already would have gave it up.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he was recruited to play lacrosse at Notre Dame. So I think it would be better for football if he probably was able to kind of focus all on it after this year. I think that would be great. And maybe he will make that decision, maybe he will do that because I mean, maybe some of the other players will make that decision for him. Because that's exactly what I was going to get into, because I think that's, if I look at it where, I think one of the things, he moved to the field last year and I mean, he was pretty good, but I think he is a natural slot receiver. And I bet if he would have practiced all spring last year, he would have worked in the slot and competed with Greathouse. Instead, Greathouse had such a good spring that they were like, well, we're going to move him to the field and do that. So I don't know. I do think, and you look at all the talent that they're bringing in, there's just going to be competition. So if all of a sudden Cam Williams makes it, everyone's like, wow, Cam Williams, then that's going to be something where, Faison, I'm sure, doesn't want to be a backup on the football team. So we'll see how it plays out.
Well, this is the year. This is the year for KK Smith and Cam Williams and Logan Sedalte and, some of these young guys, Micah Gilbert, you have the guys coming in. I mean, they got 3 wide receivers coming in already that are early enrolled. And so those guys are going to get a ton of reps too. And so, if I were Faison, I'd be concerned that my starting spot might not be there. If those guys have good springs, it just may not be there. So if I were him, that's what I would be thinking. But if you love to play a sport, you love to play a sport. But it just is what it is. All right, Mike, why do you think that Freeman has gone with 3 practices after the blue and gold game? Is this so the players don't have time to get into the portal if they aren't sure exactly where they stand, or is it just so the 15 practices aren't so compressed? Well, I think it's that. I mean, in order to do it, they would have to be playing, because there's really only 3 weeks of football, spring football, the way they have it set up, just you would have to go almost 4 times a week to get rid of, or, to eat up the 15 practices. And when, the spring is supposed to be light on the body, it's not supposed to be heavy on the body. And I don't think that Notre Dame wanted to go that heavy when it comes to, especially because they were so heavy after, the Indiana game. They still had essentially 3 weeks of practice. And those are 4 times a week you're practicing. So that's essentially a spring practice in itself, as far as the extra practices that they had, plus the game on top of that. So, 3 more games, that's, 12 practices in 3 games. So that's essentially a spring practice that they've already had. And I just think that they didn't want to put so much on those players. And that's how injuries happen, when you start to wear down your body, and that's what you don't want to have.
Well, I think they had set the date for the spring game like so far in advance. And obviously that wasn't with the assumption that they were going to finish the season when they did and all that. And they had to manage that. So I think that had a lot. They still want to get the maximum amount of practices they can get, but they don't want to, all of a sudden try to squeeze it all in right before that date. And obviously there's people, you know how some people are with the spring game. They like plan it like months and months ahead to like, meet up their alums and all that. So,
yeah. All right. Has the staff pinpointed anything to enhance the official visit experience? They missed on every official visitor since last May. Clearly has some were late offers, but it's clear they were not closing here. Can't have that again this summer. And you're preaching to the choir to me, man. You just are. And I don't know if it's anything that they actually did in official visits. I just don't think they had a good read on the situation going into it. And I think the guy who was giving those reads is gone. So he's no longer here. And so I think you have to have a better understanding of where you are. And, I've explained this to Yama, and I've explained it to a lot of people, but when you have a guy who's always positive, just positive, isn't this the greatest? I call them promotion guys, promo guys. Isn't this the greatest? This is the greatest thing in the world. Notre Dame's the greatest, blah, blah, blah. It's hard to go to somebody like that and say, you know what? I don't like this about Notre Dame. They're not the people that you want to say that to. People have a hard time if you're always positive, saying something negative to that person, because 1, they may not react the way you want them to. And 2, you want to be positive with that person. And I think that is really kind of what caused a lot of the problems. Is I just don't think that they had a good read at all on where they were with a lot of these guys. And again, when you have one guy who's kind of dealing with it all, if that guy doesn't have a good read on things, then you're going to put yourself in a bad position. And I think that's what Marcus found himself in. I think he goes in there thinking, okay, well, we're in first or second. If we're in second, I got to get to first. But if you're in third and fourth and you thought you were in second or third, if you're third or fourth, there's literally about 0 chance you're going to get that guy when it comes down to it. Those guys, when they get down to the official visit time, they mostly have a really good idea where they're going. They really do. And it takes something tremendously, drastic to change their opinion. And so I just think that that's where they were at with all this. All right. We're all anxious about the quarterback battle to see who will be leading the Irish next season against Miami, but what are some of the position battles that you're excited to see this spring and fall? I'll start with me. And everybody who listens will know this will probably be the first thing out of my mouth, and that's the O-line situation. You have Ashton Craig's not going to play. Anthony Knapp's going to be very limited. They're going to limit Wagner and Schrouth as well. So there's a lot of dudes there that are going to be battling. So, where does Gerby Lambert line up? Where does Charles Jugasaw line up? Where's Sullivan Absher going to play? What will happen with a guy like Styles Prescott, who is coming back and he's got to show some stuff, to make sure that he slots himself, because you got some young linemen. You got 3 freshmen, that are early enrollees coming in as well. So O-line for me, and absolutely wide receiver. I think that that's going to be the talk besides quarterback. Anything you want to add, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, those 2 positions for sure. And then, defensive tackle, because that's one of the positions where they don't have anyone who's restricted or limited. And all those guys are there, like the early and the transfers are in, right? So those guys are there. Dawson and Hughes are there. You got Onyé is back now, so he's back there. And then you got Rubio and Heinisch, who played like a ton of snaps over the course of the last 3 games. So, you have all those guys there. You have Armel Mukum. You have Sean Seviano. Like, I mean, Cole Mullins sounds like he'll be limited or whatever until maybe later, so he's probably not in the mix. But you got maybe like 7 guys who are really going to be like competing, 7, maybe 8 guys competing there. How many guys are going to like be in the rotation? Are there going to be guys who become like the frontline guys? That is a huge question, I think, for coming out of spring that you really want to see. So that is a position I think is going to be really, really interesting to kind of to look at and see where they're at, because there's some guys there that I think like, you know, are capable of taking like big steps, but it's just like, which of them are going to do that?
They really need Mukum and Saviano to take a big leap. That's what they need. They need both those guys to really take a big leap, because these guys are gone soon. You know, Dawson's here for a year. Anya will be gone. Rubio will be gone soon. You know, it's like you need those guys that next round to step up. And so we got to hear a lot about Mukum and Saviano. That's what we want to hear this spring, is that you know, they're really coming on hard, and because they're going to need them moving forward. All right. With the modified, the guy wants to know what's important to accomplish this spring with the modified schedule. I think we talked about it. You know, I think you want to have a good idea of the pecking order at quarterback, you know, what it is. You're not going to probably name a starter or anything like that, but I think you want to have a pretty good idea where you're at. And I think you have to know how many wide receivers you can count on, right? Pauling's going to be limited. Malachi Fields won't be able to play because he's not going to come until spring or till fall or summer. So you gotta know who besides Greathouse can help us this year. And I really think that number's got to be at least 2 more guys, at least, you know. Faison will probably be, I assume, limited because of you know, so lacrosse, but so you got to come up with, you know, is it Cam Williams? Is it KK Smith? Is it Micah Gilbert? Is it, you know, who is the other 2 that you know you can count on next year? And I think it's very, very important. They have to find 2 that they can. We know Pauling will contribute. We know Fields will contribute. We know Faison and Greathouse, but you really need 2 more that you know can step in and do something for you. Anything you want to add, Jamie?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Yeah.
All right. Do you know what staff positions ND is still hoping to fill? Are they still trying to find a high-level recruiting hire, or did Carter Almond take that over? No, I do think that they're definitely trying to find a player personnel. Carter will certainly have a big role and has taken on a much bigger role and done a really great job so far. So, but I do think that they're looking for somebody in that player personnel role. I'd guess that we'll probably hear something about that in the next week or so, maybe. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But it's, you know, they're definitely going to be pushing to get that out there. And then, you know, we'll see what other hires they may make. I'm sure Mike Martin has some thoughts about things he would like to add and to enhance the situation. All right. Over under 2 weeks until the recruiting coordinator's announced. I'd say under 2 weeks. Over under 1 month until our next commitment. I got to figure you'd get one sometime this spring practice. Usually they'll get 1 or 2 that come in. So I would guess that they'll probably get 1 or 2. We'll see.
There's always like every year for the last like 4 or 5 years, there's a surprise from the next class that like we don't even know about, just happens too, right? So yeah. I would watch out for like, there might be a 2027 kid that just like out of nowhere, you're like, wow, didn't even know this guy was even a decisional, but he just falls in love with Notre Dame, and that's that.
Yeah. All right. Wants to know about ND's involvements in negotiations with Congress regarding NIL. Supposedly Bavacqua and Freeman visited DC recently. I think in these situations when these coaches go and athletic directors, they're not there to negotiate. They're just there to tell their experience and how it's affecting them at their particular schools. They're not there to kind of, you know, hammer out details and all that type of stuff. I just think that they're there to kind of let everybody know, hey, this is what's happening in our sport. This is why it's a problem. Here's some thoughts that we may have on how to rectify the problem, but they're not there to really kind of hammer out any deal or anything like that. All right, let's see what else we got here. All right. When Marcus was first hired, he stated he wanted to be involved in every recruitment in some capacity. Do you think this desire has made it hard to get in on recruits early? Since Marcus is so busy with everything, I wonder if the staff has to wait more on recruits until Marcus has the capacity to be involved. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think he wants to be involved in it and have a relationship with them, but he can't pick up the phone and call them all the time. So where you need him is when he's closing, but you also need him to have at least some sort of relationship with the guy. But, when you start out the situation, Jamie, you may have 150 guys that you're recruiting initially.
Yeah.
And then you have to narrow it down. And so I think what they want with Marcus is we know this guy is a top guy, and we also know that he's strongly interested. So give him a call. And I think that's kind of where they're at in this situation is they have a group of guys they know that are strongly interested that he's had conversations with, but he can't call them every week. He can't be their buddy. He's not going to play Xbox with them and, things like that. He just doesn't have that time. But he can check in once every week or every 2 weeks and just say, hey, love to have you here, that type of thing. But you can't have him doing that on 150 guys either. It has to be a limited number. And you better be right on who that limited number is. Otherwise, you're wasting time and opportunity for him to go recruit somebody else. And so, again, that's why it's extremely important to have a good read on where you actually stand with these players. And, I think if truth be told, that's where Marcus Freeman was most frustrated than anything is I think he felt like they had a lot better opportunity to close on some of these guys than they actually had when he actually went in to do the job. And so I think that was something that needed to change. And, whether certain people are here or not, I have a feeling that some of it would have changed regardless because you just didn't feel like you had a good, accurate picture of where you were. And you can't go into a closing situation as a salesperson and not know what you're trying to overcome and, not knowing where you were at. And I think that was the biggest part of it. So anything you want to add, Yama?
Yeah, I think with that, it's impossible to do all of that, to be involved in every way. When I think was talking about more of like, hey, the guys who are your top targets, right? Yeah. Like that kind of thing. The guys that that like, because everyone gets an offer and that is the start of it now, really, right? Like that's the start of things. And he's going to get involved, like maybe with the really big high priority guys right away. He will talk to those guys right away, but he's not going to talk to every single one of them, at least in a very personal way. But they this is another thing too, right? Where that person, like you said, Mike, has to have a read on, hey, Marcus, we need you to get involved with this guy in particular, because this is going to be the thing, because he will do that. And he's obviously shown that he's willing to do that. This isn't like Brian Kelly where, he's busy golfing or whatever. Like Marcus Freeman is always doing something for the program or whatever, right? Like he's doing something around that. So if you just get him on the right guys and have a good read of like when he needs to come in, I think he is one of those guys who can close. And like, I think part of it with like Mad Ferrermo is like, that helps when you have a guy like that in that sense, right? But it has to be the right guy at the right time when you need it. And that is, I think, something that hopefully improves with this new kind of like recruiting department.
Well, I think the other thing too is you have to have. Here's my theory on this, and some people will. I don't know whether they'll agree with it or not, but it's not a theory based on me guessing. It's a theory based on things I've heard. there are lots of kids who are interested in Notre Dame, but when they come to Notre Dame and before they even get here, especially before they even get to Notre Dame and come visit, there's this preconceived notion about what Notre Dame is. And for a lot of minority kids and people who, live in a completely and totally different environment than what Notre Dame is, there's a lot of anxiety about that with kids. And I don't blame them. I've said it many times. It's like, you can't be thrust into some situation and expect you to be immediately comfortable. That's just not the way it is. And so I think you need somebody talking and communicating with these people who can help alleviate some of that anxiety before it even gets to the point where Marcus Freeman is talking to him about trying to close, right? You need to have somebody who has a relationship with these kids and understands that they're going to have these kind of anxieties. And how do you talk to them and make sure that they understand that, we can overcome that? And by the way, there are a lot of minorities here on the football team, and they've all overcome it. They've all succeeded. But I'm not sure you can do that with, X guy or Y guy. You got to have a special type of person that can talk to them and have those kind of relationships and conversations. And I think, in my opinion, that is the biggest hurdle that Notre Dame has in recruiting. That and the actual having to go to class. I think those are the two biggest hurdles Notre Dame has in recruiting out of everything else that's out there. Of course, going to the NFL and that type of thing is certainly very high on their list. But when it comes to, am I going to be comfortable and do I have to go to class? Those are very, very big, important things. And I've mentioned on the show before, I know a number of guys who've had that kind of issue and even talked to a lot of former Notre Dame players who said it was a huge issue for them. And they just took a leap of faith and were glad that they took that leap of faith because it's really rewarded them, in a big way. A lot of people know that, I've been good friends with Ronnie Rodimer for years and years and still am. Talk to him all the time. And it's like he told me the other day, he's like, Mike, I didn't even really play. And he's like, how Notre Dame has helped me is just amazing. And he's like, if these guys could know how Notre Dame has helped me personally and me build my business and what I've done. And he's like, I didn't even really play. And he's like, it's just amazing if you tap into that. And of course, there's just a lot of things that you have to overcome. And so I think that's why it's very important. And I also think that's why Marcus Freeman, and I'm sure Mike Martin has had a say in this as well, wants to make sure whoever they hire for that player personnel, they find that type of person, right? That type of person who can have those conversations and can make people, relieve a lot of their anxiety about this. Because if you can do that before they even come on the visit, or if they can do that after they came on the visit and they look around and you can tell that they're a little bit uncomfortable, if you have that person, then by the time Marcus Freeman comes into close, they've already had those conversations. They already feel better about it. They've already talked to a number of Notre Dame players about it and that type of thing. And so I really think that that's a big part of that, something that they have to overcome. And that's why they're taking their time and trying to find the exact right person to be in charge of that and have those conversations. It's really, really important. So
it's a critical hire.
Excuse me. Oh, it's a very, very critical hire. Very, very critical hire. And so I think it's smart to take your time and make sure you get the right guy. All right, folks, that's going to be it. I wanted to mention, if you could, we'd greatly appreciate it if you would share our content out there on social media. If you would take the show, if you come find us on YouTube, search for Irish Sports Daily. We'd certainly love you to subscribe. We'd certainly love you to like the channel, like the videos, but also make sure you share it with your friends out on social media. That helps us grow the channel. We'd greatly appreciate that. Also, great time to sign up. Go to the front page of Irish Sports Daily. Click on the premium section. Sign up today. Lots going on with recruiting. We have Pot of Gold Day. We've got unofficial visits coming. We got official visits coming. And, of course, a lot of spring football. So a lot of good news coming about Notre Dame football moving forward. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Greg for doing a great job with the production of the show. And, of course, the Yama, the one and only the Yama. So wearing the A's hat, representing. I'm digging it, man.
Hey, you got to represent. I mean, I hate that the A's had to leave Oakland. What a joke. Hate these stupid owners, these greedy owners. But also, you know what? Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. Thanks for listening today, everybody. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next week on Power Hour.